What is up, Stoppage Time fans? We are back after a week hiatus. I was on vacation. I took some PTO, went down to Florida. Had a very nice time in Disney. I'm preparing for retirement. You know, all the Northeasterners go down to the south to Florida, so I'm just prepping for that. We have, as you can see, to my right or left, however you want to portray it. I think it's to my right on the camera, even though my hand is pointing to the left. But beside the point. Um, this is Joe Cappuccino. Joe, how we doing, man?
I'm doing great, Cliff. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. We have a really great show. As you know, as we've talked beforehand, a lot of things to get into, a lot of big topics. Obviously, the weekend results that happened, what the implications have for the rest of the season, as well as some questions for our section that we call Cappuccino Time with Joe. And I didn't bring a cappuccino, but I did bring an espresso. So we're gonna be having
Close
our drink.
enough.
Joe didn't bring his, so
I
he's
did
slacking
not.
a little bit. Next
I
time,
did not.
hopefully, when he's on, we can have a nice espresso and we can do the ching ching together on the screen. But yeah, so we'll get some of the business out of the way first. This pod is brought to you by All Juve Cast, our amazing team, and by Sharp Tarts Apparel. I don't have my clothes on because it's in the wash like every time because I'm basically wearing it every single day because I love the clothes. It's super comfortable. Um, and yeah, so that is kind of it for our business that we got to get out of the way. Joe, give me some of your initial thoughts on this weekend's action. What was the first word that came to your mind?
Uh, I'll say gridlocked. And I mean gridlocked in the sense that now the top four is pretty much decided. We're
Mm-hmm.
set with who those are going to be. And that's locked in. Everybody else needs to fight for the scraps to see where they end up. So it's really about the mid to lower table teams, seeing who gets that last Europa League spot, uh, and seeing who can fight to the end to stay in Serie A. So that is what I would say.
That's a
That
great
was my
word to
word.
describe it. That's a great word. I was going to say extra because everybody was being extra. Napoli was being extra with all the goals.
That's true.
Salernitana was being extra with them pulling out a draw against Atalanta, which we'll talk about later. Big shocker. Roma and Bologna being extra because neither of them could score a goal. They were making everything
Hmm.
super dramatic. And obviously, Milan getting the 1-0 over Fiorentina. They had to make things extra by making us all sweat it out to the end. But let's get into the first one. We'll talk a little bit briefly about this match. Napoli Sassuolo 6-1. What a just absolute routing of Sassuolo. Sassuolo did not look like themselves. They didn't look like they had any fight in them. Napoli just really flipped the switch really, really early and just kind of just attacked them from the onset, giving Sassuolo no chance to really stay in this one. But Joe, is this a little bit too late for Napoli? Firing on all cylinders, but we're really coming down to the wire in this season, and they're already, I think it's 7 points behind Milan, and they're 5 behind Inter. So they're really behind. Is it a little bit too late for them?
Uh, I want to say it is just them. They're going to need a lot of things to go their way in order for them to come out on top. We were talking before, we started recording. There's 4 games left, so that's 12 points total. They would need Milan to lose at least 2 of those games, which is, that's theoretically possible.
Yeah,
Um,
they have a tough schedule.
they have a tough schedule. They have Verona, Atalanta, and Sassuolo. So actually, they have 3 games coming up. My mistake. In any case, they would still need Milan to lose at least 2 of those games in order to recoup the amount of points necessary to get back on top. That's also expecting Inter to also drop points, which
Yeah,
honestly, if you're looking at the scale here,
doesn't look like they will. They have a very easy
it doesn't
schedule.
look like they can. So it's like, and I'm not saying that Inter's a crazy club, always has been. So there's still potential for them to lose points.
Yeah.
A draw would still be detrimental, and it can happen. I'm just saying that the percentage likelihood of Napoli winning the Scudetto is low. So I'm
Yeah.
talking like probably less than 10%.
Look
It's
at
just the
Joe
math doesn't favor them.
pulling out the percentages. I like it. I like it a lot. So we're gonna keep going through these matches. We're gonna do a little bit of a breakdown of them, and then at the end, I'm gonna give me and Joe will go through the match by match comparison of what these teams have left in the schedule. We'll go a little bit about who has the most difficult, which I think we could probably agree it's Milan. And we'll go through all the top 4 teams and kind of see how things will shake out. We'll touch on that in a couple of minutes. Next up, I want to talk about Inter Udinese. There was some controversy in this one. Inter won this one 2-1 against Udinese, but there was a penalty that when I looked at the replay, it didn't look like there was much contact. It looked like there was a foot in the way of Dzeko, a foot being slid down in the way of Dzeko, and he made an absolute meal of it. Even if there's contact, if a player makes such a meal out of a foul, do you think they give it the other way and they give a simulation? Like, Joe, tell me what you think of that play.
I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't actually see that play in the highlights.
Okay.
But, you know, here's the thing. You got to look at the VAR review. I'm assuming that VAR had to look at it because
They did.
otherwise, so then that just means that the ref saw something that we didn't. I mean, it's always difficult if you can say that they made a meal of it. Maybe the ref didn't see it that way. Dzeko's a big dude, so like
Yes.
I don't see how he could make a meal of anything. But
He went like this and then fell to the ground.
the sport never ceases to surprise me with some of the actors that are in it, so it's entirely possible.
It's got more actors than Hollywood, man.
But either way, Lautaro Martinez buries that penalty. That's all. That's what she wrote.
Yeah, and a lot of people were saying that it wasn't, and then there was some in the wings that said it was. Either way, Inter did deserve the win. They were playing better than Udinese. Udinese did have their chances, though, so it wasn't like so far-fetched that they could have pulled out a draw in this one. Really interesting. So Inter keeps themselves in second right now. And then Roma-Bologna. This was a really interesting one because both of these teams, I thought Bologna would be a stumper for Roma. I thought Bologna could have gotten an upset in this one, but it ended up with a 0-0 draw. It was crazy because both teams had a chance many times in this match to make it 1-0, and I thought somebody was going to score a goal, but nobody could seem to find one. What were your thoughts on this match and everybody's lack of finishing boot?
I mean, I'm not entirely surprised that either. I mean, I'm more surprised that Roma didn't find the back of the net just because they have more firepower than Bologna certainly do. I'm not that surprised that this game ended in a draw. I feel like this game has draw written all over it just by the the looks of it. It's Roma versus Bologna here. Not entirely surprised by it, but Bologna have had some moments like they upset Inter the last round, and they've come up with some draws in the past. I think that they're still a club that's going through the motions, so to speak. So yeah, I don't think that there's a whole lot here, but I think that Roma will be kicking themselves because they need every single point that they can going into that last Europa League spot. They're right now they're tied with Lazio, so imagine Lazio beating Roma on the last day of the championship, and that would be a very, very bad day.
But I mean, they did win the last derby match, so they're really flying high on that. And apparently, according to Mourinho, when he goes to his Lazio community, his neighborhood, everything goes silent when he walks through the neighborhood. So I just find that hilarious the way he described that. But for Roma, I know he's just such a character, but I find it really great because for me, at least for me personally, I think I had, if I'm not mistaken, Roma in 5th place prior to the season. I had a lot of faith that Mourinho would make them like a on the cusp top 4 team and get them in the top 6. Because like you said, it is a project that's still developing, but I think the talent is there where they could be a top 6 team. And if they could stay there, I would be really impressed that they were actually able to, you know, complete, the season in such a fashion that it kind of, I don't know how to say it, but kind of what I manifested. I like to think I manifested this top 6 run from Roma. Same with Fiorentina.
Okay.
I thought Fiorentina would make top 6. I thought they'd make 6th. And it's still not out of the question. If you're looking at the table right now, Fiorentina has 56 points. Lazio and Roma both have 59. So it's really not out of the question that Fiorentina can make, and Atalanta's right with them at 56. So this is going to be this is a grind to make that top 6. And for me, and we can talk about this in a second, for me, I think Roma and Fiorentina end up as 5-6. I just don't have any faith in Atalanta or Lazio to hold those spots. But let's get to that in a second. Let's now pivot and go to the Milan and Fiorentina match that ended 1-0 Milan to Fiorentina. There's another match where Fiorentina had their chances, but they could not finish. Milan ending up getting the victory off of not the best shot from Leao, but it was close enough that it was hit at such a velocity that the goal couldn't really react quick enough and save it. But Joe, give me your thoughts, Milan, on this match. What do you think?
I mean, this just shows what championship level teams do. They can be on the back foot for the first half of a game, but then they come back second half, ready to fight, and that's pretty much, what happened here. I would say the first half was, mostly Fiorentina. You can see that in some of the chances that they created. There weren't a whole lot of chances in this game overall, but the first half was when Fiorentina really could have, capitalized. They were, a couple of shots from distance and whatnot, but still they had the lion's share of the chances there. Then second half starts, pretty much Milan there, and it was scrappy. Like we said before we started recording, it was a grind. It was one of these matches that it really could have gone either way, but the like I said, that championship spirit comes through in some of these squads, and that is what makes the difference, and that's the difference here. Leao has been having a fantastic season, and he's just continuing that now. So he's going to be the guy, I think, until the end of the season that Milan really need to rely on, and we'll see what that ends up getting them.
Yeah, and I want to personally apologize to Leao and to Martino Puccio because I told him that I thought that he was going to be a bust, Leao. I thought he was a guy that, I knew he always had the potential, the skill. For me, it was always the effort. I always thought he lacked effort. I thought he lacked giving, effort in terms of pressing, in terms of, dropping back. And he's really improved that. He's become more of a nuisance for defenses and, trying to always find the ball and always, a lot of the times he used to just dribble and try to do little moves. Now he's properly using his pace, doing a little stutter and then sprinting by a guy because it's literally one of his best attributes, if not the best attribute, is just his pace. He can just dribble by anybody. So I wanted to apologize to Martino and the Milan fans because he's been phenomenal. And I don't apologize to Martino often, so he's got to just take this one and go run with it because Leao has been phenomenal this season. But yeah, big win for Milan. And then let's touch briefly on Salernitana Atalanta. What was your reaction to this result? I think everybody was in shock that Salernitana pulled this result out.
I mean, this shows more about Atalanta than anything. Their poor run of home results continues.
Mm-hmm.
So they just have not been good at home lately. I mean, even if you look at the stats, you would think that this game should have been in the bag for them, but that just honestly wasn't the case. And
Yeah.
and you know what? That's the MO with a lot of these lower table teams is that they will frustrate the ever living hell out of you, and no matter how much you push and how much you shoot, doesn't always pan out in that one direction. And
Yeah.
if you give these lower table teams that opportunity, they will take it, and that's what ended up costing Atalanta. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not out of the question saying that Salernitana might be staying in Serie A. I think that they still need to actually win matches, but this, like I said, this is more about where Atalanta are as a club than Salernitana.
100%. 100%. It makes me sad that they're going to make it out and Venezia probably will not, because just bought a Venezia kit, as you know, and I wanted them to stay up so we could see more of these beautiful creations. Hopefully, we still see a lot of nice creations in Serie B, but we'll see. Now, I really want to get into with these teams that we mentioned in the top four. I want to talk about their schedules, the remaining schedules. So let me go down through the list, and we'll kind of break it down. So first, we have Milan. Their schedule is as such. It is going to be, the remaining schedule is going to be Verona, like we mentioned, Atalanta, and Sassuolo. Next, we have Inter. Their remaining schedule is, sorry, let me pull it up. Empoli, the Coppa Italia with Juventus, Cagliari, and Sampdoria. And then we have Napoli, who it's going to be Torino, Genoa, Spezia. And then Juventus is obviously in fourth. Obviously in fourth, they're not really, I don't think are they mathematically out of Scudetto technically?
Technically, no, but like Napoli, they would need a
Yeah,
lot to go their way in order to even think
exactly.
about it. So
They probably, of all the teams besides Milan, they have a really tough schedule. I mean, Genoa not really, but Genoa, they have to play the Coppa Italia against Inter the final, Lazio, and then Fiorentina. That's a tough run. So out of those teams, I guess really more out of the top three teams, because Juventus is basically out of it. Who has the most difficult schedule?
I would say probably Milan.
Yeah,
Aside from Juventus has a pretty tricky. It's a more tricky schedule. I'll
yeah,
say the Coppa Italia will be what it will be. That
yeah,
has no bearing on the championship, but that's a tricky schedule. But Milan's is legitimately difficult. I think that they can beat all of those teams. It's just a
yeah,
matter of can they mentally stay the course. Verona is a very,
yeah,
very tricky team. Atalanta, who I believe they're playing away, they gotta be. They have to have luck on their side there, or at least the statistics so far say that Atalanta aren't good at home, so they got to take advantage of that 100%. But Atalanta could very well still surprise us. Who knows?
I feel like
Um,
Verona's I feel like that's the trap match. I
that
think
would
that's the
probably be
one.
the trap. Them and
I
Sassuolo.
Exactly.
They're both
Well,
trap games.
yeah, those are the two trap games. I think Verona more so because they've given a lot of the top teams a ton of
Definitely.
trouble. I think this screams like a 2-1 game with like some
Yeah.
crazy last minute goal off someone's butt or off someone's like thigh or something crazy. And Verona win it 2-1. But I agree, it's Milan. I think by far out of those teams, besides Juventus, I think they have the most difficult. Because I think the Coppa Italia does add kind of a different dimension, kind of in terms of how do you
Well,
rest
it's an
players
extra
and stuff.
game.
Exactly. You have to decide, obviously the Scudetto is important, but this is also still a trophy. Whether people want to put stock in it or not, it's a trophy in your trophy case. So Juve we've been spoiled for a long time. We had it for a long. We got the Coppa Italia many, many years along with the Scudetto, so we kind of got spoiled. But it's still a trophy, like I said, at the end of the day. So that Coppa Italia does kind of, in Inter's mind, that kind of, if you're an Inter fan, you might be worried, do we go all out for that Coppa Italia and then, risk maybe somebody pulling something or something crazy happening? What would you do, Joe, in that situation? Would you start your strongest team in the Coppa Italia final, or would you maybe go some maybe subs in that game?
That's tough. Um, if I had to, I would. It's a game against one of your biggest rivals, so you got to go all out.
Yeah.
You really do, and it's a final. It's a cup final. Like
Yeah.
it's the Coppa Italia, and I think that in Inter's case, I don't know if it exactly matters all that much because I think that they still have the squad depth to kind of
Yeah,
make it up. So yeah, I think that they could easily not put their starters in there
yeah.
and still take home a result, or make it go all the way to penalties. Who knows?
I agree. I agree with you when you say that because if it's any other team, they don't have a choice. They have to start their strongest lineup. With Inter, they have the option to play some of their depth pieces because Alexis Sanchez, for example, has had moments this season where he's been in great form. He's had a renaissance at Inter, and you have other guys who could fill in when need be. You have Di Marco, who's good, Darmian, who's actually been good this season. So you have guys who could fill in. But I think if you're the manager of Inter, I think you have to respect this match. I think you have to respect the integrity of the game. I think you have to play it as if what it is. It's a final, so you have to play your best squad. But who knows? In hindsight, if a player, God forbid, we'd never want a player to get hurt. But if a player gets hurt, or if something were to happen, hindsight's 2020. We could say differently then. But let's move on a little bit. In terms of the top four, does it end like this for you, or do you think the order changes?
I think I honestly, I think it can stay this way. I believe Milan can actually clinch the Scudetto. I think that they'll probably grab it from Inter, despite their tougher schedule. I think that they have all of their eggs in that basket, and I think that they can do. I think if they mentally stay the course, that they can win. Um,
Give me your top
it,
four right now.
Milan, Inter, Napoli, Juve. I think it's
Okay, so,
going to
so it
stay the
stays the
same.
same. Okay. All right, Joe. I like that. I like that. So for me, I just think whenever I watch Inter, they look too strong on their day. So I'm gonna go. I think Inter beats like Milan by like a point. I think it's gonna be a point. Like it's gonna be one of the tightest Scudettos we've ever seen. Like in our probably in our lifetime that we've seen. It's been a while since we had a really competitive Scudetto. So I think it's Inter Milan, not yeah, I guess Inter Milan, Napoli, Juventus. I think that's how it stays. And I don't think for Napoli, if you're a Napoli fan, I don't think you're happy that you don't win this. I don't think you're like overjoyed you don't win the Scudetto, but I think considering things like, Osimhen getting hurt, the AFCON Cup, so many players having to go to that, I think you'll take the top four. I think they'll take it. I think Juventus will take it under the circumstances. I think the only one who will feel done wrong and bitter will be Milan, and rightfully so. If they can't pull a result, say something crazy happens, like I said, in the Verona match, I think they might have some ill will and some saltiness towards that, as they should. But we'll see. There's a couple games left. We don't know until the games are played. So we'll see. But that's my top four. Now, let's go into a little segment that I like to call Cappuccino Time with Joey Cappuccino.
Oh
And I
boy.
got my espresso. It's not a cappuccino, but we're gonna roll with it. Let's just pretend it's a cappuccino. Nice cup of Joe, as you like to say in America. We got making all the coffee jokes. Full of Joe's here. So let's go to our first question from George. He said, thoughts on Pirlo to Spezia? Obviously, there's been some news saying that he might be in line for the next manager of Spezia, as Thiago Motta might want to move on to a new challenge. And then he follows that up with potential candidate for manager of the season next year. Joe, give me your thoughts on the first question, followed by the second one.
So aside from coaching the U23s, this is the kind of job that Pirlo should have had from the very beginning. A lower table team where he can fully test his ideas, and there's not a whole ton of pressure on him. And I think that he would have probably really, if he had this job before he went to Juve, despite him winning trophies at Juve, I think he would have really fleshed out his philosophies and his managerial style,
Mm-hmm.
having done this. So this is the kind of job that he should have had. So
Exactly.
I'm excited for him. We'll see. We'll see if it actually happens. We'll see how well he does with a Spezia squad. I know we were talking before the pod, about where they would end up. I don't see I don't see even hiring him as a manager moving the needle all that much. Like we're talking, they're 16th place right now, something like that.
Yeah, I think. Let me double check it right now. Just bear with me, Joe. Keep talking.
I want to say that they're 16th,
Okay, let
but
me double check. They
yeah, they're 16th.
are. Oh,
They are
okay. You
16th,
pulled it up quicker than me.
and I don't see them finishing all that much higher than that. Maybe 14th,
Yeah.
depending on different acquisitions and stuff. That's just the kind of club that they are. But I think that that's good for Pirlo. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of pressure. The biggest thing, the number one goal is to stay in Serie A. So that would be what he's tasked with. All the rest, just take it in stride. But that would be probably his only requirement. As opposed to the second question, which I think was coach of the year. Like I'm assuming
potential candidate.
Like for next season or for
now? For next season,
like,
he potentially has at least being in the running.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I do not see. At least not right now. Not right now.
I'll say I think the only way he gets, and I'll touch on the actual potential move of him being the manager in a second, but for him being a manager of the year, he would have to take that team top 10. Mm-hmm. If he broke the top 10 with them, I would seriously consider it if he could break the top 10 with them, because I think that would be a huge accomplishment considering all the talented teams in front of him. With that being said, I think you hit it right on the head. I think this is the perfect job that Pirlo should have taken in the first place. It's a like you said, it's a step up from being a youth manager. You're managing a team that is 16th right now. If he manages, I think he could take this team 14th, 13th, a couple spots up and improve it. Give them a little bit more. I think Thiago Motta has been a good coach, but I think he could maybe implement more ideas. Having coached a much higher level side, or whether you think he did a good or bad job considering what he had, that's aside the point. But he has that experience now of coaching a big club, so maybe he can implement those ideas to a smaller club and kind of guide them into being kind of saying and whispering in their ears, this is what it takes to be a champion. I coached a top level team, a top 14. This is what you need to do to get to that level. This is what we need to do. You guys need to follow me, and this is how it needs to be for us to be successful. So I think he could really do some good things with this team. I think there are some pieces there on Spezia. I think they have some talent there, and maybe they add a few young players to that roster. And I think, like I said, 13th or 14th is a huge improvement. And I think this is a start of a successful managing career for Pirlo. I think we've talked about this ad nauseum. He was thrown into the fire too soon at a big job. If he had gotten a Spezia last year, that would have been the perfect thing. That's the perfect start for him. So we'll move on. Thank you, George, so much for your question. We'd love to hear the feedback. Another wonderful Juventina, Cheryl, asks, why am I your favorite Ferrari tifoso, Joe? And I messaged her back. I said, this is a tough question for Joe because we don't like to pick favorites. So, Joe, how do you respond to that?
No, first of all, Cheryl is from Malta.
Wonderful person.
Malta is an amazing place. I love Malta. I've been there a dozen times.
Oh,
love
lucky
it.
You, Joe.
So she has that. So that's awesome, and that's one reason why I love her. But you get she's my favorite because you can tell she lives and dies by Ferrari. It's absolutely it's palpable. Her passion for
she has at least Ferrari, 5 Ferrari tweets a day,
and she's great. She's a great person. So
she's wonderful.
That's why you're my favorite, Cheryl. So there you go.
That's a very big endorsement because I know there's a lot of Ferrari fans who are now, they're now really down in the dumps that Joe's picked a favorite. But Cheryl's awesome. She's great. Thank you so much for sending that question in. And now a little bit more of a serious question about Juventus. What would be the ideal summer mercato for Juventus? And should Juve go for Verratti or should Juventus? And these are two separate questions. Should they go for Verratti? Should Juventus go for Donnarumma? Well, let's get to the first one, Joe. What would be the ideal summer mercato for Juve? And then I'll go after you.
So my ideal summer mercato for Juve would be SMS, bring back some of the youth products, bring Ravella back, bring
Ravella
Fagioli back,
Hive.
sign a left back. I've said it a number of times. I really
Yeah.
like Grimaldo. I would sign him in a heartbeat. But before any of those things happen, got to get rid of some of the dead weight. So that needs to happen first.
Rabiot needs to go.
I would feel well, especially if they want SMS. The
Yeah.
rumors that I'm reading is that SMS would come with a 4 or 5 million, euro salary, which is bananas because I think Rabiot is making
7.
So
So
think
stupid.
about that. Think about that for a second.
Yep.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So first, get rid of some of the dead weight. I'm talking the Sandros. I'm talking the Rabiots, and I'm also talking about the Arthurs. So get them out.
The side pass merchant.
And exactly. Thank you, Cliff. And bring in those guys. I think we should probably also be looking at center backs as well.
Okay.
I know people have been saying Bremer. I feel like he's pretty
Off
much Inter's.
Yeah.
So we'll have to do a little bit more shopping in that department. Chiellini and Bonucci aren't getting any younger, and we also need some attackers as well.
I say look at Bundesliga for center backs. There's a plethora of center back talent in Bundesliga. I think that's such a untapped area that Serie A doesn't really go to a lot. And I think you're right. I think SMS, number one priority. Well, let me say this. I think our number one priority, honestly, because I think you could get away right now if you brought back Rovella and you had him, McKennie, Zakaria, Locatelli, and then you had one more midfielder. I think that's a solid midfield. SMS would take it over the top. But I think the really pressing need is actually a left winger. If you're going to run a 4-3-3 formation, I think you need a really, really strong left winger because Morata and Keane are not going to cut it. Neither of them are.
And if Berna leaves too.
Exactly. If Bernardeschi leaves. And even if he was here, I don't think he would cut it as a starting left winger. I think you need a strong top-tier left winger. Not saying Mohamed Salah that people have been throwing out there. I think one player that's been on my mind is Terrier, who is a left winger of Stade Rennais in France. And I think I haven't checked his stats in a while, but it was a couple months ago. He had 16 goals as a left winger on the season. I haven't watched a ton of Ligue 1, but I've watched his highlights. I've watched some of his stuff. I've talked to people in Ligue 1 about this. And obviously, if there's any Ligue 1 fans, please, DM me, tell me more about, Terrier, because I'd love to, talk more about him, learn more about him as a player. But from what I've heard about him and seen, he seems like a really competent left winger. So I think for me, you have to go after a strong left winger. If Leao was available, I would take him in a heartbeat. I think that would make Juve ridiculous. But if Milan even considered it, they would want 100 million plus. That's what they'd want for him, which would be out of the question for Juve, I think. So I think if you get SMS, get a good, solid left winger. It doesn't need to be top tier. Just get a good one who can, maybe get 7 assists, 5 goals in the season. A guy who can complement Chiesa on the right. And then you have Vlahovic obviously up top. And then if Keane, Berna are your backups, I think that's perfectly fine. If they're your backup wingers, I think that's great. I think it's really would be very solid depth. So I would say go SMS. Like you said, left back. I love the Grimaldo shout. I'm forgetting his name. There's a guy who plays for Atletico Madrid. Oh, Lodi.
Yeah.
I think Lodi's phenomenal. I don't know if Atleti would consider letting him go for less than like 50 mil. But I think Lodi, Grimaldo, those are great shouts. Phenomenal players. I think we should even look to maybe bring in another right back because we're very light at right back. Like Cuadrado, he's a forward. Let's be honest. He was serviceable at right back last season, but he can't keep it up. He doesn't have the defensive work rate that we need a right back to have. So I would say if you really, really, I think you go for a top midfielder in SMS. You get good outside backs. I think if you can. It sounds crazy because we have so many holes, it feels like. But I think, like you said, number 1 is SMS. Number 2 is left back. I think 3 is left wing. And And then I think last is center back and right back, because I think Gatti and De Ligt was kind of some of your short-term solve, kind of long-term solve for the center back position. But you should bring in another player for some rotation. I think even an Igor. I think an Igor could be a great player to bring in because I think of him as almost like a Walmart version of Bremer. Very physical, very good with his feet, very strong, very good presence to him. He was able to stop Vlahovic a little bit when we played them. So Igor is really an intriguing player for me too. I know Fiorentina don't want to hear another player potentially leaving, but I think he'd be a really good fit as a rotational piece. But that's my thoughts on that. I've kind of rambled a lot about that, so I apologize. But let's go to Verratti and Donnarumma. If we got SMS, I don't think there's a chance we get Verratti because it would cost us too much. But they would complement each other so perfectly with their games. Oh my gosh. It would be so beautiful with the Locatelli, SMS, Verratti midfield with Zakaria, McKennie, Ravella on the bench. Oh my gosh, what a midfield that would be. Joe, give me some of your thoughts on the Verratti idea.
I mean, I would love to have him at Juve, but I think that he's a great midfielder. He gets injured a little too often, and
Yeah.
he can be reckless. So those are the two biggest knocks against him. But if it were him or Donnarumma, you got to go Verratti on that one.
Yeah.
I've said it time and time again. Goalkeeper is the one position that Juventus do not need to worry about at all. I think Szczesny's good. I think Perin is good. They're both on long-term contracts, so I think we're set in that department. And if they were to look at a goalkeeper, I think they should look at somebody like Carnesecchi, who's playing in Serie B.
Okay.
He's having a great season. I think he's an Atalanta youth product. I know Juventus has been looking at him for a while now. But those are the kinds that he's young. I think he's like 18 or 19.
So the perfect solve is you get him and then you put him on the U23 team.
Yeah. So he would be, that is the kind of move that we should be going for. No knocks against Gigi. He's had his ups and downs this season, that's for sure. But he's still a serviceable, good goalkeeper.
Oh, I think he's more than serviceable. I think he's still world class. I think he's just having a rough season.
World class, not 100% sure. He had phenomenal Euros, but I think that the pressure gets to him so bad. I think that he's
still only 23, right? Isn't he still only like 23?
Yeah. He has a long career ahead of him.
I love how everybody wants to just pile on criticism on him. He's like younger than me, which is crazy. Like I don't know if I probably would not be able to handle that pressure, being like the national goalkeeper and all that. So, I mean, I think you make a good point. I think that is a position that's not like a premium position. I think goalkeeper you can get away with, developing a youth talent, like you said, Carnesecchi, put him in the U23s and work with Perin and Szczesny with what you have now and have him waiting in the wings once he's ready to bring up. So I think that's a great point, Joe. If you had the pick of the two, I would also go Verratti over Donnarumma, even though last year it seemed like in terms of when he was on the free, that was probably the best opportunity to get him. But we will see. I don't think either of those players will end up at Juventus. I think SMS has been the Juventus player for years now, and now it's just finally coming to a head where he's just like fed up at Lazio and he wants to leave. He wants to win things. No disrespect to Lazio, but he's not winning anything there. So I think it's time for a move, and I think Juventus get him. And at $4 or $5 million a season, absolute steal for the talent that he is.
Well, it just depends on what price we can negotiate with Lotito for him, because that'll be the real issue there.
Exactly. So let's get to the elephant in the room. The last topic I really wanted to discuss. The news that it sounds like there's no official word yet, but there is word from Gazzetta, from multiple sources, that Dybala has chosen Inter Milan as his new home to play at. Like I said, nothing official. These are just, what Gazzetta is saying, and take that with a grain of salt. Joe, your initial reaction to that news?
I mean, like you said, take it with a grain of salt because it is Gazzetta. It's not 100% reliable. But I think that even just the rumor, having that out there, is bad. I mean, bad for Juventus fans. It's that's a blow. Like that is an emotional blow for Juventini. So what more can you really say? You're going to go to a team that Juventus fans hate more than any other club, and you wore the captain's armband. You know, like you were the number 10, and you're leaving for them. That's pretty much how I feel about it. I'm sure that others feel the same way, but like I said, whether it's true or not, it still looks and feels that way. So,
from a PR perspective, it's awful for him. In terms of the fan perspective, from Juventus fans at least, it's a stab in the back in terms of him leaving, and then also the rumors were that he would take less money. It would be apparently less than what he was even asking for Juventus. So for me, like I said, take it with a grain of salt. If it is true, I think the only reason it is true is if his market dried up and Inter were the last one standing who said, this is what we'll give you. Take it or leave it. We're going to give you whatever, $5 million a season. Take it or leave it. And then he probably talked to his agent and said, this is the best offer we're going to get. And then he takes it. But I still think Atletico Madrid is the best team for him. I think it's the best fit for him. He obviously speaks Spanish. The manager of that team is Argentinian. There's plenty of Argentinians on that team. I think the play style there suits him. Spain has a very similar style to Italy in terms of its pace and the style of play. But if it's true, it's terrible. It's a kick in the butt. It stinks for Juventus fans. But I see people, throwing hate out there, saying, like really, really awful things. I wish him success. It's obviously, he needs to look out for himself in terms of business. Like I said, if that's the only offer that was really materializing, I understand, because you need to make money. You need to take care of yourself and your family and all of that. Set yourself up for future generational wealth. But if there were other offers and he could have gone somewhere else, but he chose the team that he knows that Juventus hate, he knows that Juventus fans hate, that would be a really, really, really big kick in the butt. And like you said, that's really all I could say about that, because it's still rumors. We really can't say too much more because it's not official yet. If it does become official, we'll obviously speak more about it on all Juve cast more than anything. I'm going to make sure I'm on that episode if that happens, because I really want to talk about that. But that's going to do it for our show today. I want to thank you, Joe, for taking the time. Joe always is such a great guest. And thank you, everybody, so much for the questions. This has been really, really fun, besides the ending, the way we had to end, kind of a little bit of a touchy topic. But overall, it was a very fun show. And I hope everybody has a great night. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Please drop a like and subscribe to the video. It's always very much appreciated. And we'll see you guys on the next episode of Stoppage Time. See you guys.